As the events progress, the heat turns up. In this case, it's quite literal. Drivers will need to try to keep their cool as they hit the brickyard and for one more time here in the PCA Sim Racing Series 14 Challenge class. You'll see it all live here on Race Spot TV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Ron Mons. And behind the scenes is our director, Ramiro Cisneros. We're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. As we take a look at the schedule here, Ron, one last time, back home again in Indiana, I suppose.
Yeah, we have been back home in Indiana for quite some time, but wrapping up this part of the schedule here tonight and looking at the calendar that lies ahead. So I have a diverse series of racetracks to look ahead to. Laguna Seca next time out here for the series coming up in 2 weeks' time. Then we rounded off at three very different circuits. Motorland Aragon, which I usually associate with motorcycles. Zolder, which I associate with briefly hosting Formula One. And VIR, which is truly the sports car track to end all sports car tracks on the east coast of the U.S. I love VIR. Zolder, I have a soft spot in my heart for it, and Aragon really going to be venturing off into the unknown for these racers. A pretty diverse calendar here from what is usually a pretty darn good series, and the challenge class, it's been a diverse cast of characters finding success thus far with two different pole sitters and two different race winners in the first two races.
Yeah, it's been a bit mixed up out there, and we do have a few ties because of the drop weeks. They count the drop weeks immediately in this series. So with the one taken out, we've got a tie for first, a tie for second, tie for third. And then finally, Adam Holland sits on his lonesome down in seventh position. From there, you also see James Legault sharing that ninth spot with Vernon Messer. We'll see if that gets shaken up a little bit here today with how many different drivers finished in different positions at the last round. We're into the qualifying session. Big talking point, of course, Ron, has been the heat on the track surface. Look at that, 49 Celsius out there.
See, I'm going to say this. This is a quip that popped into my head right as you're doing the broadcast open, Joan. You can let me know if our other esteemed colleague here at Race Spot, Mr. Ewan O'Leary, or you've made this joke. We're racing in a brick oven here at Indy. That just popped into my head. I'm surprised I didn't come up with it last week. We are racing truly in a brick oven. It has been scorching hot for these competitors. The tires have been just getting to the point where they melt down like ice cubes. This is a track that can be a little bit tough on the tires as is, but add in some hot track temperatures into the midst of that. These drivers have been cooking with their performances while their tires have been cooking even more so.
It looks like, Vernon Messer just moved up to the top spot with a 29.5. And that is going to put him about a quarter of a second clear of Les Carmichael, who was our pole sitter for a good chunk of this qualifying session. In the meantime, most drivers, I think, are getting towards the end of their 3 laps available. I see Antonio De Silva. He just crossed up onto the front row. Thomas Doherty, who we've got on screen, is on his final flying lap. Needs about half a second to take the pole. Let's see if he's got it.
Looking to see if this will be the pole time for the driver of the number 59 car. Only has to gain a half a second, and he gains a decent amount of it, but not enough to usurp Vernon Messer up at the top. Was just going to say 2 weeks ago here at Indy, saw some very close lap times. So a little bit surprised that the field is as spread out as it is at the present moment. Still early on in this qualifying session with these drivers trying to get their final times on the board, but a little bit shocked that it is a bit more on the spread out end here today.
Yeah, especially considering that it's not a super long lap, doesn't have too many corners out there. De Silva has already taken all 3 of his laps, so he can't improve from this position here in third. Doherty obviously just took his last one up to P2, half a tenth off of the pole time. Trippett is done, and it looks like Markussen is as well. Is anybody able to set a time? No. Andrew McCune is sitting stationary. He could try and take off, but he doesn't have enough time to get around to complete a lap since they end the session as soon as it hits zero. And it's not one where you can keep carrying on the hot lap. So very interesting that we've seen it solidified this early on. Every driver apparently very eager to get out there and get their 3 laps in.
And what's rather fascinating looking through the order as it's set currently with a tick over a minute and 15 seconds left to go in this session, your second row comprised of Antonio Da Silva and Les Carmichael. Those are the two drivers that have started from the pole thus far in the first 2 races of this season. It was Carmichael who led the field to green in the opening round of the season at Spa, and at Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago was Antonio Da Silva who was your pole sitter there. Da Silva looking to bounce back after a rather unfortunate way that race at Watkins Glen ended for him. Was on track for a victory and then bad rub of the green towards the end, handed it to Todd Goldberg at the end of all of that. But Da Silva and Carmichael not going to get their second poles, as with 35 seconds left on the clock, looks like Vernon Messer going to keep on the streak of different pole sitters in the races here thus far this season, and it may not be a big gap between himself and this man Thomas Doherty in the number 59 machine, but it's just enough to get that number 1.
Yep. It doesn't matter if it's a thousandth or if it is 10 seconds. He is on the top spot, and that is what matters. Track position has proven to be quite key, especially with the heat out on the track, making it a little bit difficult to try and pass. And one of the reasons that has been important is because with this heat, when that sun is relentless, you should make sure that your sunscreen should be too. Mo Hansom's new sports sunscreen spray is now available. It's SPF 30, broad spectrum, and reef safe. Plus, this spray is water resistant for up to 80 minutes. It's even TSA travel sized and made in the USA. This protecting spray is perfect for 120-degree Indy track surfaces. And to prove it, tonight's driver of the hottest lap in qualifying will receive a 2-pack of Mo Hansom's Sport Sunscreen Spray. Learn more at their Instagram at Mo Hansom Skin and at their website, mohansom.com/sunscreen. And as you were saying, it looks like that top spot going to wind up going to Vernon Messer, along with a little bit of sunscreen to help him smile that little bit more after today is over. We'll see whether or not he can convert that into a victory as we wait for the warm-up to complete. And pretty soon we'll take a look at Vernon's lap. Here it is right here. Talk us through, Ron, on what makes for a quick lap around Indy.
Well, this racetrack is really one of a kind, in a facility that's one of a kind as well. There's nothing like the Brickyard. There's nothing like the Indy Road Course originally built back in 2000 for Formula One. It has some unique turns, and this is probably one of the most dangerous and treacherous first series of corners that we'll have from the entirety of this season. Turns 1, 2, and 3, a relentless assault on these cars, and still not over as you head your way off into turn number 4, a curved braking zone. Really tough to try and find that apex as you head your way back on the power all through the 5 and 6 chicane. That was one of the modifications that's been made to this track over the years. That was added in back in 2014 to bring the Indianapolis Grand Prix onto the road course starting that year, and it gives you a good enough run at a good enough head of speed as you head your way down into turn number 7. Similar to turn 1, with a very dangerous curve on the inside, heavy braking zone and a bit of bottlenecking action. Really tough to try and go through there side by side, but if you can make it work, it will be golden. That was 8 and 9 that we saw. Another one, the changes made to this track over the years, heading your way back onto the high banks very briefly as you head your way out of 11 and back on the brakes into turn number 12. 12, another turn similar to 1 and 7. You got that killer curb, you got the bottlenecking, heavy braking zone into a 90-degree turn. Can be a good overtaking spot. Now, we saw this corner, turn number 14, the final bend around this track, be a bit of a source of trouble in the past few weeks, past couple of races that we have seen over the past week here on Race Spot TV. Saw some drivers sliding out of that turn in the pass, keeping the throttle down, building that momentum all through the turn as you're turning and having to deal with that rather nasty transition from the apron back onto the banks of turn number 1. Can be very tough. Let's see how these racers are going to tackle the challenge of this track in this 1-hour race that lies ahead.
Indeed. So Messer on the pole position is going to have Thomas Doherty to his outside, with Antonio De Silva starting from third and Les Carmichael in P4. After that, it's Johan Nye from the fifth position as Ed Trippett starts in sixth this week. Then it is Jeffrey Block starting from seventh. You've got Robert Galais in P8. Sean Bailey on the inside of that fifth row. Top 10 going to be rounded out by James Legault. After that, it is Keith Markison in 11th. Anthony DiVincenzo is going to be starting in at 12th. Alex Lidback is in 13th. Then the outside of row 7 goes to John Kaplan, 14th. Dave Jones is P15 and David Santry in 16th. Jack Stevenson going to be starting P17 today, followed by Aiden McCune in the 18th spot. Last car on the grid going to be Lisa Eskridge here today. So a slightly smaller field for our challenge class. Should still be a challenge for them, no doubt, as they're all going to have to deal with extreme heat on the track surface, as this is set in the middle of the Indiana summer in the sim. Just about a minute left, and based on what we've seen so far, I'm very curious how clean they're going to be able to make it into that first corner, because it's been a pretty good record these 2 weeks, Ron. It's just the other turns on the first lap that have seen some drama, ironically.
Yeah, as much as I said in the track guide, and we say a lot whenever it's a broadcast at Indy, doesn't really matter what series you're commentating at, you always have to talk about the challenge of turn number 1. It can be a huge choke point. You see it a lot in real life, whether it be IndyCar races, whether it be the F1 races that were here from 2000 all the way up until 2007, whether it be down to NASCAR's brief stint on this road course. Doesn't really matter what the case may be, it is always a point of contention. But as you just said, Joe, really every other part of the track, specifically turn 4, proved to be a bit of a challenging point for these racers in past weeks. We'll have to see if we can keep that streak going of having clean runs into turn number 1. A silent assassin in my book is always turn 7, very similar to turn 1 in the just textbook definition of it all, but a lot of people usually put so much worry into turn 1 that they completely forget about turn 7, which is just an absolute menace of a turn in its own regard.
We saw a lot of incidents there last night in the sport class. So yeah, I agree. It's something the drivers do need to keep an eye on, as we see them lining up along Holman Avenue now, and soon they will be released behind that safety car and be on their way. Messer going to be trying to get as good a jump as he can get coming down into that first corner. You see the onboard perspective of the 911 car there for a brief moment. Do love some of the paint schemes that they implement in this series. Drivers tend to try to get pretty creative out there. In some cases, with some of the drivers, Ron, having their own Porsches, I've even seen a few of them match their real Porsche livery.
Yeah, it is really cool seeing the diverse paint schemes out there on the racetrack. One thing that I always love looking at, just it's something I occasionally bring up on the broadcast, but something that's always in the back of my head. Good-looking paint schemes. As a guy who got into racing as a kid, as so many of us have, you always want to look for the cars that look the coolest. Sure, if they are running fast and running up at the front, that's fine. But when they look cool, that's usually what catches my brain the most. Maybe it's just down to the fact that I whacked my head too many times as an infant, or whatever the case may be. I always look for the cars that look the coolest and the most spectacular. And even back when I was still in my karting days, I always prided myself in having a good-looking race car. Same thing works in the sim. If you have a good-looking race car, you're going to want to have the ability to bring it up at the front. And these drivers looking to have a good race, similar to the pole position side of things. We've had 2 different race winners in the first 2 rounds of this season. And as we get closer and closer to that halfway mark, I think we're looking at the opportunity that many of these racers will try and seize on, and that is to jump up to the top and be like, hey, I'm the driver to beat this season. Look at me as being the main championship contender. I think that's going to be a big thing riding in these drivers' minds in this race here tonight.
Probably going to be watching out for Jeffrey Block a little bit, our current points leader, who is going to be starting all the way back in 7th. He's got some work to do if he wants to make it a second win. Control having been given over to the 56. He waits for the call from the flag stand before he can go. And there it is. Green flag is out. And it looks like Messer does get a decent start, although Doherty is still a little bit alongside him coming down to the braking zone. In fact, he's almost pulling even as we hop above and watch De Silva. He's close behind, could steal a spot from either one of them if they slip up into this first corner. So far, so good. Not seeing any incidents, and mostly too wide, very little three wide into there.
It's still side by side up on the front as Messer and Doherty continue to scrap out into turn number 4, and it's going to be 3 wide. Look at De Silva making contact.
Wow. And Messer is the one that comes out the worst for it. Off into the gravel he goes towards the back. Jeffrey Block also had a bit of a spin coming out of turn 2, so he falls down to the bottom of the field. Now it is Thomas Doherty leading the way. De Silva into second. Carmichael up into third.
And yet again, a pole sitter in these races running into at least some amount of trouble. Unfortunate for Vernon Messer, he's all the way at the back of the pack, but side-by-side racing into turn number 4. Those two drivers chasing their tails a little bit, must be said, as they had their way off through there. And a rather gutsy lunge from De Silva there, contact being made all through the turn, and off into the gravel trap goes Vernon Messer. De Silva, after the disappointment a couple of weeks ago at Watkins Glen, looking to bounce back and try and grab his first win of the season. Messer, meanwhile, going to be on the back foot early.
And I'm very curious whether or not De Silva is going to see any sort of penalty from that. We had a lot of penalties last night. Here is what happened to Jeffrey Block. We saw a little bit of it on the bottom of the screen of that initial replay, but I'm pretty sure there was no contact there, and he just spun himself out. So back on board with Ed Trippett now, as he is just behind Les Carmichael. This is for third position, so not too far behind. Oh, and Carmichael way off the apex there, Ron.
Yeah, really starting to see these drivers begin to struggle. Speaking of struggling, that's Antonio De Silva off the track. Off through the chicane, you can just barely see that bright green car sticking out from the bright green grass here at Indy, but I saw that car go off the track. That chicane off through 5 and 6. That is uncomfortable in just about any sort of race car you drive around. They're killer curbs, even in a sports car. If you're in an open wheel car, forget. You just look at that section the wrong way, miss an apex by a couple inches, and your car is probably going to turn to an airplane. Let's look at to see what happened with De Silva. He actually lost on the first bit of the curb, got the back end at, and going off the track in dramatic fashion. He thankfully keeps it out of the barrier, but these racers not running into any sort of drama with each other, just really learning that this track can bite hard. It may seem rather unsuspecting with how flat of a track it is, not a whole lot of elevation change, but it can bite, and it can bite hard, and we're seeing that already in this race.
Yeah, a number of our front-running cars have been losing places early on. Battle for P8 between DiVincenzo and Kaplan. Kaplan in the gold machine behind is sizing him up, but I don't think he's near enough as they hit the braking down into turn 1. He'll stay as he is. So less than 5 minutes in, really, and already we're getting some dramas.
Already seeing some drama, already seeing a bit of paranoia go throughout this field as side-by-side racing go on in this battle for P13 as Dave Jones in the 313 car and David Santry. Those two continue to duke it out for that spot as you look at the car a little bit further behind them. I believe that's Jack Stevenson, the rear gunner of that 3-car pack. As we jump a little bit farther up the road, Les Carmichael has put on a pretty all-right drive to jump his way up in a second, but he is not out of the woodwork just yet as you have got a train of 4 cars tailing him. This battle stretching all the way back to James Legault in the 027 car is rather intense. Meanwhile, Thomas Doherty is just driven off into the sunset as chaos goes on behind him.
Yeah, this is really good news for Doherty. He's already broken that slipstream, but Carmichael experiencing a bit of what we had seen in last night's race, which was a lot of trains starting to form. Is he the plug in the spigot, or is it just the draft that's allowing the drivers to kind of hold on to him? We'll watch to see whether or not Trippett could maybe get by, and if so, will he be able to outrun his rival? But for now, he's not close enough. And once again, no passes, it looks like, being attempted amongst this front group, although very good on the brakes there from the 444, maybe a little too good.
We see a battle going on right behind. I think, let's see what happened to David Santry as he heads his way off through the second's last turn. A spin out of turn 13 for the driver of the 511 car. He's going to drop down. Oh, and spins up yet again. That's one thing that we got to talk about with the drama for many a racer all throughout this field. Usually think, okay, you overheat the tires a little bit, no big deal. Here, on the other hand, with how scorching hot the track is, if you have a spin, probably going to take you a decent amount of laps to get the tires to a point where they won't be just hopping mad at you anymore. So for Santry, kind of proving that right there with a double whammy coming out turn 13. Would not be shocked if these drivers have multiple spins in a row just because their tires are so hot that their grip just goes down the toilet.
Once again, Trippett able to get very close, this time down to the braking of 12. They'll switch back into 13, both of them trying to set up for the run onto the main straight, one of the most important corners on the track here. And it doesn't look like Ed got the best of exits as he drops back a little bit. But down on the bottom, we got another pair of cars coming up on the banking as well. Battle for P8. Trippett's going to take a big look, but again, I just don't think he had the speed coming into that braking zone. Down for DiVincenzo. Looks like, oh, well, he's closing up behind Bailey, actually. So this has become a battle for P7, if anything. And I think Anthony went a little bit far in there.
Yeah, the turn 1 and 2 section is really awkward in all sorts of race cars. You miss it a little bit off through 1 and you're going to be done for through 2. As speaking of another rhythm-based section and a driver messing up, Antonio Da Silva with a very awkward run as he headed his way out through the 5 and 6 chicane. Missed the first part of it. Oh, as that's a driver missing the turn 7, that's Edward Trippett diving down to the inside to try and bail out of that. He's got to give up that spot to Les Carmichael. Will probably have a slowdown to serve, but now Antonio Da Silva having some moments off through turn number 5 and 6. If there's any section around this racetrack that is momentum based and you gotta make sure you hit your marks perfectly lap after lap, that 5 and 6 chicane is certainly it. Even in these sports cars, if you hit that turn 6 inside curb a little bit nastily, you're probably going to jump completely out of the state. You could very well end up in like Toledo, Ohio when everything is said and done.
Silva definitely needs to work on that set of corners, that's for sure. Now he is back down to 6th. I think he had climbed up a spot or two since his initial mistake earlier on, but has given it away once again. That's James Legault just in front of him, coming down into turn 1. He gets a little close to the rear bumper, but he is still stuck in this train that all forms up behind Carmichael in the 9-12 at the front of this. So he'll have to try again maybe a little bit later. This is Nye in the middle of it in the other orange and black machine chasing Trippett there in the 444 car. And this time that looks a lot better from Da Silva as he keeps it on the track through 5 and 6.
Yeah, I think Da Silva at this point is probably going to have some nightmares about that 5 and 6 chicane, but if he can dust off those bad experiences and hit the ground running throughout the rest of this race, he's going to be feeling quite good about his chances. Meanwhile, side-by-side battle going on a little bit farther behind. That's Sean Bailey and Anthony DiVincenzo as they were side-by-side all through turn number 6. DiVincenzo holds on to that P8 spot for now, keyword being for now, as he's still close to the back of the 999 of Sean Bailey, and then Sean Kaplan right behind him all over his rear bumper as they had their way down off into 12.
I haven't seen any change this time. Somebody having a little bit of an issue. Was that Da Silva once again? Yeah.
I think he had a half spin.
Well, and that has now put him into the clutches of Bailey DiVincenzo. Although I think it looks like John Kaplan might have a good shot to change positions here as well. See him getting close to the back of that 420 machine as Da Silva gets himself back up to speed. And it has been a mistake-riddled race for him. Let's take a look at it as he was going for a move. And I'm going to guess, yeah, he just took too much speed into it.
Yeah, carrying way too much momentum down into turn number 12. I said it in my track guide, and I'll say it once again because I feel like a lot of truth is said and in just Turn 1, Turn 7, and Turn 12 here at Indy, they're so deceiving. When you go in there, you're thinking, okay, this is a heavy braking zone, I can get this move done, but with how much the track bottlenecks, you're aiming for an apex that isn't there. It's so tough as you head your way up through there. Look at Les Carmichael, he had a moment of his own. He spins out of P2, drops down to P5 in a rather similar moment. He didn't go for a move this time. I think he just overcooked it down off into the turn. It does a half spin and drops down from a surefire P2 spot down into P5. He's going to have to make up a whole lot of time to get back into that spot.
He is going to be ruining that. How many drivers up in the top 10, I would say, at this stage have we seen making mistakes, critical mistakes here? And there was almost one right there by Sean Bailey. Could have given up a lot of spots. It did hurt his exit. And now suddenly Anthony in the 420 car is all over the back of him. Are we going to get a braking duel down into turn 1 as we watch from the bumper of the 999? DiVincenzo getting very close. He's going to look down to the inside as deep as he tries to brake, though. He cannot get side by side. He'll stay in 8th.
Unfortunately, they're not able to make the move stick as they headed their way down into turn number 1 and 2. That section, if you want to get a move done through there, you've got to be very decisive down into the braking zone. Side-by-side racing off through 1 and 2. We see it in real life. We see it in the sim as well. It can either go really well or really poorly as that's contacting down to turn number 1. Vernon Messer, unfortunate there, got clipped by that spinning car of Jack Stevenson as he tried to sweep around the outside and avoid that drama. He's got to drop down as I think in real time, Sean Bailey's had a moment with Anthony DiVincenzo. Drama down off into turn number 7.
Wow, it is all kicking off. And that was actually Jeffrey Block that initially clipped the back of Vernon Messer into that corner. So, and in real time, there goes Anthony off the track as we see the incident that turned Sean Bailey around. My goodness, I can see where the heat is starting to affect many of our competitors today.
Yeah, not only is the temperature hot out there on the racetrack, I think the temperature's hot underneath the helmet for many of these racers up and down the field. Some of them looking to brush off some disappointment in the opening 2 rounds of the championship and hit the final 5 rounds of this season off running strong and hard through to the end of this championship. Others, meanwhile, they look to try and defend everything they have, and I think that sort of conflict of interest, the conflict of strategy here in this race could be the reason why we're seeing some drivers butt heads as often as they are. It's been a rather hectic start for many of these racers, some going for some moves just out of the blue, really trying to get a good race. I think part of the reason why Antonio De Silva has been going for the moves is he goes for another one, Les Carmichael, into turn number 7, and some of them have sucked, some of them haven't. I think part of the reason why De Silva has been so aggressive early on is just down to the disappointment coming out the last round of the championship at Watkins Glen.
That's going to put Les down into P6 for the time being. And De Silva on, I guess, his second or third trip back up through the order if he can help it. Multiple incidents. Jack Stevenson, I noticed, lost a couple spots. Let's see what cost him. Oh, I think, did he dip a tire into the grass there on the entry? Oh, and Lisa Eskridge with a very close moment and a great job to sneak through the tiniest of gaps. I think that is... trying to make out who that is behind her that also kind of made his way through. I think that was Vernon Messer, actually, as well, managing to find a little bit of an opening. And Vernon still sitting in 15th after starting on the pole for this one. It has not been going to plan, except for Thomas Doherty. Seems to be going quite smoothly for the 59 today.
Yeah, Thomas Doherty is probably the calmest man on the entirety of this racetrack. I mean, a 5.6 second gap to the car behind him of Ed Trippett, and Trippett has a pretty comfortable margin between himself and Johan Nye. So really, if anybody's feeling good at the moment, it's probably him, as Andy McCoon not going to be feeling very happy about that moment down to turn number 12. Has to use, I believe that small little dogleg detour is the remnant of the old MotoGP layout back when the motorcycles used to race here many, many moons ago. I think my Indy memory is serving
No, you're right.
correctly there.
That's right.
There we go.
Yeah,
my Indy trivia is still on point.
Back on board with De Silva once again, this time with Legault. So can he take this fourth spot? If he gets by, he's only about 3 seconds behind Johan Nye. So I don't think a podium is completely off the cards here by Antonio De Silva. Incredibly, with all the incidents we've seen, there hasn't been any penalties handed out yet. Not sure if that will change as this race goes on, but watching down in turn one, it might look close from the compression of the camera angle. You can see it is definitely too far away by the time they get down into the corner. A little hot there for James Legault, though, as he's able to scoop it up just in time. De Silva is going to be taking note of that, though.
Yeah, I gotta wonder what the thought process is underneath the helmet of the number 24 car of Antonio De Silva. As Anthony DiVincenzo has a half spin heading off through the final turn. I mentioned that right in the track guide and proving my point right there. But no, I gotta wonder what the thought process is for Antonio De Silva at the present moment. You know, you think about the first 10 minutes of this race and how they went. They weren't exactly the smoothest. Now is he gotta look to try and just keep it clean and green up until the pit stops and then maybe push a little bit later on, as he's still going to be keeping his nose to the grindstone to make up those spots. And as you just said a few moments ago, Joe, the window for him to end up on the podium not fully shut. It's going to be a challenge to pry it fully back open so he can jump in like nobody's business. But it is still a possibility for Antonio De Silva to walk away from this race with a podium. So we'll have to see how the 24 driver tackles the rest of this race with the bit of extracurricular drama he's already had.
Glad we've turned our attention to John Kaplan, not just because it seems like he's another one leading a bit of a train at this stage, but I think it's worth noting that he's gained the most position so far. Oh, and we've had a problem for Doherty. He's no longer a leader, and he's got a black and orange flag. Some sort of serious damage has come to the 59 machine. It is now Ed Trippett who has inherited the lead.
Oh, and look at the damage on the left-hand side of that race car. Did he maybe lose it coming out of the final turn?
That's the best I can figure. Yeah, because that's a strange place for him to have that damage, unless maybe there was some lap traffic or he spun in a strange way. So coming around, you can see how much trouble he is having getting the car back. So here is Ed Trippett on the replay, and you want to see Thomas Doherty. Oh, so you're right.
There.
Yeah, it looks like he had already smacked the wall, and there goes the pass for the lead.
Yeah, similar situation to what we saw involving Anthony DiVincenzo not too long ago in the 420 car. He had a half slide, half spin, heading off through that final corner and caused him to smack the wall. I have a feeling that that's exactly what happens here at one point race leader of Thomas Doherty. Now this puts him in just an absolutely terrible position. I'm not sure what sort of strategy he was looking to work with here in this race, but I doubt very highly he was intending to come into the pits just a tick over 20 minutes in. We're not even at that point just yet. I'm not sure if he could make it to the end if he came into the pits, but he's got some worries out there as a black flag in the air for Antonio DiVincenzo. Things have gone bad for him in this race. Things are going to go even worse with that penalty. But oh, that is such a big kick in the shins to the driver of the 59 car. An easy mistake to make, to be sure, but it will sting regardless.
Yeah, Vernon Messer also got himself a penalty for the incident on lap 8. Both of them one of them will need to serve it because Vernon's already been in it, looks like. So quickly got rid of that, but it's put him back to the back of the field, and he still owes us a pit stop. There's a little bit of a look from De Silva on Doherty. Couldn't quite make it stick. He is past Legault at this stage, but still sits in that 4th spot. Doherty, who we know is a bit of a wounded duck, it could give him that next position up pretty easily. Let's see what it looks like down into 7.
their way back onto the high banks. This is going to be a very tough road ahead for Thomas Doherty. How do you deal with this? Like, what sort of strategy do you try and go for to just do damage limitation? Because at this point, I think the chances of Thomas Doherty recovering and getting back into the lead and winning this race, I'm not going to say it's a complete zero chance, but I wouldn't be putting money on it if it were myself. So if you're Thomas Doherty, how do you deal with the rest of this race? That is the real question that I'm sure he's asking himself presently as we catch on some of the moments. Andrew McCune had a similar moment to what he had not too long ago down to turn number 12 as David Sauntry had a half spin coming out of turn number 9. That A9 section, whoa! The Silva with the dive.
Goes off course at turn 4, so he didn't even make it to 5 and 6 this time, and he falls down to 6th position once again. Worth noting that Doherty staying out might be helping him out a little bit, although I think he's going to lose the spot to Legault here down into the corner. Just saw it off to the side of the screen. Indeed, he will. James up to 3rd. But I get the sense that maybe Thomas is trying to extend this stint and plans to come in to get to the finish and take the spare car that he has waiting in pit lane. Granted, he is within the pit window, but you know, it's always a little bit more ideal to pit later than earlier in these cars.
Yeah, when it comes to him staying out to do a little bit of damage limitation, you got to think of the yin and the yang when it comes to that as well. Because, yeah, he's setting himself up for a better run a little bit later on, giving himself a shorter second stint and elongating this first one, because usually most of the pit stops come within the final 25 minutes of these races, not within the first 25 minutes of these races. So, for him, I'm sure he's got the numbers, and we haven't really seen him drop down like a stone thrown into a pond. I mean, he's lost down some time, but it's not like it's not like he's dropping down the field like an anvil pushed out of a helicopter. He's still doing all right for himself. If Thomas Doherty was just losing time as if it was going out of style, then you'd probably say, you know what? As much as I'm going to have to swallow my pride a little bit and come into the pits a little bit earlier than I maybe had in mind. I don't think Thomas Doherty has that worry in his head, able to put in some consistent lap times, and plus with Antonio Da Silva and Les Carmichael fixing to battle up for P5, I think Doherty, I'm not saying he's like the coast is clear, because I mean his car still looks like it's ready for the scrap heap, at least
he's
on the
got to
left-hand
pit this
side.
lap though.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's got the meatball flag, so he's pushed it out. But if he doesn't come in this time, he's going to be DQ'd. And I was a little surprised that he carried on this lap as well. So let's watch and see whether or not no, he's staying out. He's going to be gone here soon.
I'm wondering. I mean, you've done this stuff a heck of a lot longer than I have, Joe, so you're probably more familiar with all this than I was, but I was not aware of the fact that iRacing would disqualify you after not serving a meatball flag, and yeah, there it is. You're exactly right. Thomas Doherty out of this race, the more you know, and for him, that's game over.
Wow. And he pulls off to the side. He realizes it now. I'm not sure what his plan was there, if he just simply, he wasn't aware either that he only had limited laps that he could run on that one, but that's a very harsh lesson that he has learned. While Da Silva still sitting in 4th, could have been on the podium by now if it weren't for multiple incidents. The really difficult thing for Thomas Doherty is we have to remember one of the new rules this season in PCA, if you are disqualified for whatever reason, you get 0 points. You don't even collect the 19th place where Thomas is likely going to wind up.
Yeah, so insult most certainly being added into entry. I gotta wonder if he wasn't familiar with that rule as well. Yeah, I've been commentating iRacing events for 3 years now, and I swear I've seen some drivers run with meatball flags for a very long period of time and not run into any sort of difficulties. I wonder if it's something with the strictness. Either way, though, doesn't change the fact that Thomas Doherty, the first driver completely out of this race, despite the amount of incidents we've seen, I haven't seen a driver retire. The only person, in fact, that's one lap down is Andrew McCune, who's had multiple moments down to 12. But Thomas Doherty, not only going to be classed down in P19, not only picking up a disqualification, going to leave this race with 0 points added into his tally. And for the driver who looked like he was on track for a victory a little bit earlier on, that is going to sting. I can't even say that's rubbing salt into the wounds. That's like rubbing battery acid into the wounds.
Well, that's pretty intense. So as the drivers continue on now into lap 17 of this race, we're just about at the halfway point. One thing that we do want to give a quick shout to, while it looks like it is calmed down slightly, is we want to give a mention to our sponsor, Princess Cruises, the 2025 PCA title sponsor, in fact. And as the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. All right, so down into turn 12. There was a close moment there. And for the time being, I do believe that John Kaplan will hold on to that 6th place. Keith Markison, though, obviously looking quite eager. Doesn't look like he's going to get the shot here as he's too far back off of the final turn.
Yeah, I love how as soon as you're done with the ad read, that's when the drivers go for the lunge. It's like they can sense the spidey senses are tingling for these drivers. They know, okay, just done with the ad read. Now we can go for the dives down off into turn number 12. I'm surprised we haven't really seen too many racers go for the lunges off through there. But you know, I say that it's probably the most boiled down version of turns number 1 and 7 around this racetrack. You've got such a bottleneck effect as you head your way from the short chute at the south end of the track here at Indy down off into the infield section that was added midway through Formula One's tenure here after some chicanery involving the tires, shall we say. Everybody may remember that from quite a few moons ago. But that turn 12, it's a good spot to get a move done, but even more so the case than turn number 1. If you get done through there, you're going to come out a hero. If it goes wrong through there, though, you're going to come out with egg on your face.
Yeah, it seems to cause some incidents for sure. This time, it's a little bit nicer for John Kaplan, and it is out of reach from Markison. Kaplan's still up 8 positions, so he's gained 1 more since we last looked. James Legault, though, is up 7 himself, so he's done a very good job up there. A few very hard chargers in this race. Oh, that was not a good exit by Kaplan. Look at how close Keith is. He's coming up to turn 1 with a good opportunity. He's kind of showing himself down to the inside, but then he lifts a little early, it feels like, so Keith will wait for something later. Oh, but he missed his braking point.
That could have been disaster as they had their way down into turn number 1. As we got closer and closer to the halfway mark, we can't even say that these racers are saying, you know what, let's just take it easy and get to the end. Then we could really start to push after the pit stops. Nope, they're still saying, let's go for the lunges, let's go for the dives, let's have a heck of a lot of fun here at Indy. I said earlier on that the track was hot. These drivers bringing the heat to the racetrack with the battle.
I wonder if the heat is what's causing those dives, though, because we saw that last night, too, that so many drivers just went too long, either ran into another car, overshot the corner quite frequently, and it seems like it's coming true quite a bit here tonight as well. Off and around through 10 and into 11. Once again, you can see the damage on the front of the 076. I've seen a lot of cars, honestly, with a little bit of damage on the nose here today, so it seems like it has been quite frequent, and another run long by Markison. Galais picks up P7 with ease.
Yeah, probably the easiest move that we have seen thus far, but still not going to be over as Galais runs a little bit wide out of turn number 13 give Markussen the opportunity to dive back again, side by side racing as they head their way around the final corner. And that running wide moment for Gallet is going to cause him to drop back down to P8. The fight now going to be on between these two competitors, the racing gods and the racing gods giveth and the racing gods taketh away. And that just about proves it right there as they headed their way off through that final tight and twisty section.
The happiest out of all of that is John Kaplan for sure, because he's now 2 seconds ahead of Markussen after he was under threat for a couple laps. And there you can see that gold-colored car on down the back straightaway, well into the clear. Still haven't seen anybody with a scheduled stop quite yet. This is over to Ed Trippett, who seems to be being chased by Johan Nye. When did Nye get this close?
Nye, I gotta say, all throughout this race, whether it be making some moves or just slowly but surely reeling in his competitors, he's been under the radar really ever since the drop of the green flag. We haven't talked about him too much here today, but he's putting in a strong performance, and now keeping Ed Trippett honest with a 6.5 of a second gap up at the front, now past the halfway mark. Johan Nye looking to give us a battle of note to talk about at the front of the field as we get to the end of this first stint. Let's see whether or not Nye could really either get this move done or maybe force Trippett into a mistake, which can be done very easily here at Indy.
You've seen a lot of mistakes today. That's a good point. It might behoove you to just put the pressure on and see what happens. Gives you the easier pass that you've had much of the day, I'm sure. Trippett, though, not blinking through the chicane. He'll keep Nye behind him for the time being. Who's going to blink first in terms of pit stops? Bailey, Santry, and McCune have been in, but all of them on my time in scoring is showing much too long for being a regular stop. We've been seeing times between 9 and 12 seconds for much of the pit stops for drivers taking fuel.
As we see these competitors, I wouldn't necessarily say settle into a groove, because every single time I say that, that's usually when they decide to go 3 wide or some sort of shenanigans goes on out there on the racetrack. But these drivers have hit the point of the race where they do have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics, not only continue to push their race cars to the absolute limit when the grip really just isn't there, but they also have to worry about those pit stops coming up soon, as I believe that was McCune, who was stopped on the outside once again, heading off through turn number 12. We've seen him go off through there. The braking zone very tough as you try and turn and brake at the exact same time. But no, these competitors do have to play a little bit of mental gymnastics as we get closer and closer to that awaiting pit cycle.
As we watch De Silva, I mean, think of where he could be if he hadn't have had his mistakes. So many of the leaders have fallen by the wayside. I feel like De Silva, currently 11 seconds behind the leader, probably could have been about those 11 seconds ahead. Instead, he's still trying to keep James Legault from being a problem in his rear view mirror. You can see Legault there in the red, white, and blue machine just behind him, and that is Les Carmichael as well in the orange and black that's close to being a part of this fight too. So all of them down to the braking of turn 7. They'll stay in that order. De Silva 3rd, Legault 4th, Carmichael 5th.
And running on their own island presently, you see the gaps between the top 2 and Antonio De Silva running in 3rd, and you look at the gap between Les Carmichael down to John Kaplan in 6th. That is nearly about 9 seconds between these drivers, and the car is a little bit farther behind. Kaplan has his own battle to talk about. It's himself and Keith Markussen saw these two drivers close not too terribly long ago. Markussen had a mistake of his own and fell back into the crutches of Robert Galis, but ever since then he's really shaken off the challenge from the 809 car like a bad case of the fleas, and he's now back up to the back end of the 526 car. This battle for P6 going to be on once again. Markussen trailing him by about 6.5 of a second as they head their way back over the yard of bricks with 26 minutes now left to go in this race.
Yeah, this definitely says to me that Keith is the quicker of the two of them. Question is, can he get by? Because he struggled with that the last time that he had rocked up to the rear spoiler of the 526 car. And maybe this is a good chance, Ron, for him to try and go for that undercut. 25 minutes left to go. I think he's within the range that it would make sense to have a slightly early stop.
I feel like of all the racetracks that we have this season, Indy may be the one where going for the off-the-wall strategies could work out the best. The pit lane is so long here. I mean, hey, you enter the pits on the outside, turn number 13, and you don't really rejoin back onto the racing line until turn number 3. The entirety of that start-finish straightaway, more or less, is made up by the pit lane, and you're running at pit lane speed heading down in there. I mean, look through this season, we've got some long pit lanes, but I think Indy probably feels the most excruciating when you're down there in the pits, running on that pit lane speed limiter. You gotta see the cars just blow your doors off on the actual racetrack. It feel a little bit demoralizing, but I think this racetrack lends itself to racers going for some more off the wall and wacky strategies. We'll have to see how these drivers try and tackle it. As speaking of drivers coming into the pits, Lisa Eskridge has done that. We'll have to see how goofy the pit stops come and how goofy the strategies become.
Eskridge, the first one, I think. Oh, no, it's still a long stop. Lisa in there for 17 seconds. Not sure what that's about, unless she had a little bit of damage to repair or something. It's a bit strange. It's interestingly enough, I think the shortest we've had, no, excuse me, Vernon Messer has been in and out, so at about 7.5 seconds. I think that is a standard stop for Vernon. Should be able to go to the finish from here. Trippett still under a bit of threat from Johan Nye, though, getting down to as close as half a second for a brief moment there from the 141. Both of them taking slightly different lines down into turn 12. Either of them gonna maybe elect to pit in. I would be not surprised if both stayed out, and indeed they will each stay on the circuit, but getting closer. Nye looking like he's had a good run here. Sean Bailey, not a good run down into turn 1, though.
Yeah, not the first time we've seen a racer have a moment like that down into either turn 1, turn 7, or turn 12. I always talk about how similar those turns are. I wouldn't necessarily say it feels like copy and paste into different parts of the racetrack, but you can tell there's definitely some similarities, even with the mistakes that go on down in there. Drivers going for a half spin, carrying too much momentum through as the track falls away from you. In fact, coming off of the slight banking on the start-finish straightaway down off into the infield. It just feels like that rear end has a mind of its own through there. Unfortunate to see another racer run into difficulties down into turn number 1 as we go to split screen and follow the battle for first and second and keep our eyes on this battle for 6th. John Kaplan still not able to shake off that challenge from Keith Marcuson yet. 0.6 of a second has been the gap between these two for quite some time. It's a rather plateaued there, though, so I think Keith Marcuson may just be sitting behind and saying, you know what? I'm going to take the good fuel number and maybe try and jump ahead through the pit stops.
And I got to give Keith credit. He's been pretty dogged in staying up with John Kaplan. By the way, Jeffrey Block also in. We're going to get anybody else doing a regular pit stop for fuel only and nothing extra. Jeffrey Block is successful. He will return out on the track what looks to be about 12th or 13th position, just before our leaders here, as we watch the battle for first on the top screen, come back onto the main straight. Marcuson still unable to do anything on Kaplan, though, and he remains in 7th.
And now, as I always say, that these racers start to get a bit more aggressive as we get closer and closer to that pit cycle. I think here today we're kind of seeing the opposite be true. I think these racers are saying, you know, we've made it so far into the race. Why risk putting it into the wall right before the pit stops, the ever important pit stops here in this series? We're seeing these racers just settle into a groove, decide to whittle the laps away, and get to that pit cycle as quickly and efficiently and as cleanly as they possibly can. Johan Nye not pushing this issue too much, maybe trying to get the good fuel numbers, just trying to keep that race car clean. These hot track temperatures may lend to the opposite being true in many a case, and I think these racers playing it easy instead of playing it aggressive towards the end of their stint is another reason why these hot track temperatures have affected a little bit more than just the tires.
Yeah, it might be sim racing, so they don't have the hot cockpit of a real car, but it does give the feeling that the drivers have been experiencing that, losing focus or losing their tempers in some cases. We got another car in. Alex Lidback this time. In fact, he's already had his pit stop. Another long one, though. Maybe drivers are leaving tires turned on and realizing too late it's not long enough for a full tire stop, but maybe enough time that it's what's extending it out here. Thought I saw some smoke as Lidback just went by the pit exit there. Trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, you may make a fair point there in terms of why the pit stops have been so long. While the other series that we cover here on RaceBot, gonna hold off on that point, as Sean Kaplan and Keith Markison going to go side by side. I thought they were going to do. Markison gonna hold back in tow. But now, while the other series that we cover here on RaceBot TV is the Radical Americas Championship, and those racers have to do 2 pit stops and two fuel stops alone. They don't pit for tires in that series. Those SR10 tires usually rather resilient, and the races round about the same length here in the PCA, about 60 minutes long for those races. And I've seen many a driver, both rookie and experienced, make that mistake. It could be a matter of pixels between you ticking off that tire change box to uncheck it or not being able to hit it in time as you're driving around the racetrack. Sim racing presents a unique challenge in the sense that these racers kind of have to march to the beat of their own drum in terms of being the driver and the livery designer and the setup tuner and the strategist. There are so many things that these drivers have to do that a small little mistake like that may not seem like a lot. It can come down to a matter of pixels, but those small little pixels that you may miss out pressing a button could result in you either finishing in P7 or dropping down outside the top 10.
Right now, the top 10 does seem to be a difficult one to reach for a lot of the drivers. One quick mention of our sponsor once again, Princess Cruises. They are the title sponsor for PCA in 2025. And as the official cruise vacation partner of Series 14, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 17 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. We haven't seen Keith here cruise past Kaplan quite yet, but he's getting very close once again. And out of the corner of my eye during that ad read, I thought maybe there may have been a chance for him to pass down into turn 1, but no such luck yet, Ron.
Seeing that come to fruition just yet. We still have 17 minutes left to go in this race, though, so certainly enough time for Markison to maybe get that move done. Who knows? He could do it through the strategy. Do want to raise that Ed Trippett and Johan Nye. The gap between those two is really spread out now, up to a second and a half between those two competitors. Not sure if Nye has had some sort of moment or if Ed Trippett has really just kicked on the Cuisinarts, but that gap growing between those two competitors up at the front of the field. Nye has been an under-the-radar driver throughout tonight. I already said that a little bit earlier on in the show, but still rings true. And unfortunately there, the one mistake that he has looks like it's going to cost him a little bit of time in the most important section of this race as a pit stop's near. And speaking of,
looked like it may have been a little bit of traffic that held up Johan Nye and caused that gap. As Carmichael into pit lane, as you mentioned here, should be in and out pretty quickly. Jeffrey Block right now is the highest driver to have pitted. Carmichael might actually be out at about the time that Jeffrey Block comes around. So he's very tentative, though, into his pit stall. He does make it, but that's going to be a lot of time given up here as Jeffrey Block is coming through 13, in and out. A nice smooth stop for Les, about 10.5 seconds, and he will be out ahead of Jeffrey Block. So now the 912 is our highest pitter.
Yeah, And Carmichael has had a wild race in his own regard, up and down the field, running into occasional bits of drama and difficulty, looking to end this race on a high note and keep that momentum rolling. Your pole sitter at Spa for round number 1, yet to visit victory lane, as we've had Jeffrey Block and Todd Goldberg do that up to this point in the season in the 2 races we've had thus far. Looks like, just based off how things are looking currently before the pit stops, that we would keep that streak going unless there's a big change of momentum right at the very end, which I will not rule out. That's the wonderful thing about iRacing. As soon as you say that something isn't going to happen, that's when the racing gods prove that it can and probably will happen.
Something happened to Andy McHugh. Oof. Big catch, good catch right there, honestly. Just touching the grass a little bit, locked him up, and looks like hopefully kept it out of the barrier. Yeah. Didn't hit anything, but unfortunately lost a fair bit of time. So we come back to Kaplan versus Markuson. Now for P5 instead of P7, thanks to a couple cars pitting. As most drivers tend to be pitting in about 12 to 10 minutes left to go. I imagine we're going to be seeing a huge chunk of them visiting the lane shortly.
Yeah, it's probably, I can't even say a slow trickle of drivers coming down pit lane. It's going to be the floodgates opening, everybody coming into the pits in one shot. And one more thing to raise in reference to the pit stops that I neglected to mention 1 week ago during the during last week's broadcast, as I choke on a sip of water from a few moments ago. These racers do have a bit of a challenge on their hands in terms of the pit lane speed limit. One thing that always catches me out is the pit lane speed limit ends a little bit later than you maybe think it would, as we are going to see a pit stop here in the form of John Kaplan making the call to come down pit lane. Keep an eye on potential pit lane infractions. It always catches me out, but very good reason why I'm behind the mic instead of behind the wheel.
Yeah, I understand that feeling. So, down to the lane for John Kaplan. Is this going to be what Keith Markuson needs now that he's got some clear air to get by this gold 526? And because there aren't as many cars as we've seen in some of the races so far, he does have to traverse for quite a while before. Now you can see all the boxes lined up. Hits his mark nice and tidy, aiming for that 9 to 10 second pit stop. Jack Stevenson, though, is back out. He's a lap down from Kaplan, so that wasn't for any sort of position. And Kaplan, with a very quick stop, 8.6 seconds.
That is blisteringly quick. That is a super, super good stop, as here comes Ed Trippett down into pit lane. Your race leader throughout a decent chunk of this race now comes into the pit. What will the order of the day be for the 444 car? Hopefully it's not pit lane speed penalty, as we see him locking it up big time, trying to get woed up into the pit. Not seeing any black flag in the air for Trippett. I think he may have gone away with one there. You saw it a few moments ago with a pit lane exit. That's always so tough. Pit lane entry, though, it does come up on you rather quick. Those double yellow cones to signal the start of that pit lane speed limit as you bend your way around the pit lane entry can come up on you rather quickly. I'm sure there have been many cases of drivers locking up those tires just to try and get woed up, dragging an anchor through asphalt to avoid that black flag.
Indeed, you got to charge those cones to make the most of it. Johan Knight then inherits the lead naturally, since he was chasing on our leader, but he still owes us a pit stop. This difference could give him a chance. Could he pull the overcut instead and overtake our leader, as Trippett is done and back out already? So he will return in 6th place. And the good news for Ed is he is in clean air.
Yeah, that is a very good thing to have here at Indy. So many medium to high speed turns around here, mainly just medium speed turns, especially turn number 14. Gosh, if there was any turn from the entirety of the season where I wouldn't want to be in dirty air, it's probably turn 14 here at Indy. That turn is so tricky just running by yourself, let alone running with other cars, as there's Keith Markuson now on pit lane exit. He has lost out on a boatload of time to John Kaplan, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, maybe even 5 seconds. In fact, he's going to drop down. Antonio Da Silva going to be the latest to come into the pits from P2 at the moment in this race. Nye stays out for another lap. Legault, meanwhile, follows Da Silva. This slow trickle of drivers coming down pit lane is starting to ramp up.
Indeed. So we still need Nye. He's decided to stay out. Looks like Galais is also going to be staying out this time. Dave Jones is coming in. And that takes us down to Trippett, who has pitted. But it's not going to be close between himself and Da Silva, most likely. It's Nye that we want to watch out for. As there is Ed just continuing on down the track. I'm a bit curious about Kaplan versus Markussen. Like you said, that's a big gap between them, and there was about 2 seconds difference in their pit stops, but that doesn't explain 5 or 6 seconds between them. And in fact, Markussen off screen has been fighting with Jeffrey Block, who is on the attack.
Yeah, there must have been something big going on there for Keith Markussen, because as I saw the gap develop between himself and John Kaplan, I was like, there's got to be, like, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, oh, his pit lane speed limiter was just for some reason, like, it glitched and slowed him down to 2 miles an hour for a brief moment. Not really sure what the deal was there, but Markussen going to lose out in the midst of all of that big time. Meanwhile, on the race lead, Johan Nye has been the latest driver to come down pit lane. This is the money stop here at Indy tonight.
And I think Nye has a good chance to maybe try and jump Trippett. It depends on how long his stop is, because Ed had 11 seconds. That's on the longer side for what we've seen from most of the drivers. I'll be watching that time like a hawk, while Ed is, just as we saw on our screens, coming out of the final corner. There is Nye now at the 7 seconds, 8 seconds, 9. It is a quick one, about a second and a half quicker than Trippett. That might be enough for him to jump ahead of him as Ed is coming down towards the pit exit, but there goes Johan Nye, and it's going to be side by side coming into the corner. Who will come out ahead between them? Nye's got his nose ahead. He's on the outside of the turn 2, which switches to the inside of turn 3, but his tires are not up to temperature, and Trippett will barely sneak by.
Oh, the closest of margins as it came out of the pits. Johan Nye threw everything at it. It's still not over, though, as he tries to get those tires up to temperature. Pretty easy task with how boiling hot the track is at Indy here tonight. He's got a good opportunity to jump into the race lead. Will he go for the move now, or is he going to maybe save it for a lunge a little bit later on? Johan Nye, though, giving himself a big opportunity to go into victory lane for the first time this season. As it's looking currently, it's going to be these two battling it out for the W here at Indy. But if they get lost up in a battle and really start to slow each other down as if they're dragging an anchor through asphalt, look at Antonio Da Silva, just barely there in the back of shot in that bright green number 24 car. He's about to head his way down to turn number 12. It's a 3.4 second gap between himself and P2 of Johan Nye, but 3.4 seconds can be gained rather easily around this racetrack, which is so hard to run clean in tough conditions like this. And when you throw in a side-by-side titanic battle with two racers looking to get their first win, a driver like Antonio Da Silva has a real good shot to close up that gap sooner rather than later.
And I got to give credit to Antonio, because he's up back to third, and like you said, has cut this down tremendously to those top two. So he's still in it with a shout. Interestingly, though, he's still exactly where he started, which was third place. You can usually tell a hot driver by how many positions he's gained in the race, especially after the pit stops. And speaking of hot, when that sun is relentless, your sunscreen should be too. Mo Handsome's new sport sunscreen spray is now available. It's SPF 30, broad spectrum, and reef safe. Plus, this spray is water resistant for up to 80 minutes. It's even TSA travel sized and made in the USA. This protecting spray is perfect for 120-degree Indy track surfaces. And to prove it, tonight's highest climber is actually also going to receive a 2-pack of Mo Handsome's Sports Sunscreen Spray. Learn more at their Instagram at Mo Handsome Skin and at their website, mohandsome.com/sunscreen. And right now, that highest climber, I believe, is actually John Kaplan still up 8 positions, if I'm seeing right. But I want to give a special shout to Ed Trippett. He's gained 5 for a potential win here. This will be a master stroke from the triple four. If he can bring it home 6 more minutes.
You know, that right there is 2 very sweet drives. What's gonna taste sweeter though? The champagne for Ed Trippett and the 5 spots that he gained in the process to get it all done, and also shaking off the challenge from Johan Nye as he came out of the pits, or is it gonna be John Kaplan making up the most amount of spots and winning the sunscreen in the process? Sunscreen works very good. I personally wouldn't eat it if it were me. I'd probably prefer the champagne. I can't actually say that since I'm under 21. But I think Ed Trippett gonna be very happy that even though he's not going to get the most amount of spots gained, he's still going to get that win at the end of tonight. Holding on to that race lead though with the slimmest of margins. 0.6 of a second is by no means comfortable. That triple four driver is probably sweating bullets underneath that VR headset as we get into the final 5 minutes.
No doubt he's feeling pressure. Also, if you're eating sunscreen, I think there's conversations we need to have behind the scenes here.
Oh, I ate paper clips as a kid, so
Wow. This is explaining some things. I've been keeping an eye on De Silva as well, because you mentioned how close he was getting, and he did gain by about 0.3 that last lap, although it looks like he might lose some time this lap. I'm not sure what cost him. I was going to say if he could keep it at 0.3, he would get close, but not quite close enough to trip it with how few laps are remaining. If there had been one less spin, one less off track there, De Silva actually probably still would have had a realistic shot at the victory today.
You know, with De Silva and the race he's put together, you take out that bit of drama in the first 10 minutes and probably the hit of confidence that came along with it. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. If you go off the track in the exact same part of the racetrack twice in the first 10 minutes of a 60-minute long race, it's going to get into your head ever so slightly. I think De Silva has been able to dust himself off quite well after that. But you do have that layover time to build up that confidence once again. If De Silva didn't have that drama early on, he very well could either be involved in that battle for the race lead currently, or who knows, maybe he could just be driving off into the sunset and holding on to 1.5, 2 second gap over these two, and this would be a battle for P2 and P3 instead of for P1 and P2. De Silva, though, I don't think he should hang his head low at all about this race. With the drama early on, the fact he's battled back into a podium spot is a very commendable drive, as he just only has about 3 minutes left to go to try and hold on to that podium.
Just a small handful of laps. Nye's going to make him work for it the entire way, no doubt. 141 staying in his mirrors, but now he's about a full second back, so that lap was not ideal after he merged just about even with Ed Trippett. 2 laps to go, I believe, if my timing is right on this one, coming across the line there. They do have some lap traffic in the form of DiVincenzo. That could make or break this race for either driver.
Yeah, those lap traffic encounters so tough to manage here at Indy. It's not the widest track in the world. It's quite narrow, especially with the grass shoulders around here. No margin for error, whether it be battling for a position or whether it be battling with a lap car just to get that move done. You gotta get done right, and you also have to hope that the luck of the green is on your side as well. If you catch them up in a really bad spot of the track, it is going to be a huge detriment. That's a huge slide from David Santry off through turn number 1. Not the first time we've seen it here today, unfortunately, for the 511 cars he spins around.
So more time lost for Santry. He's currently down in 16th. We've actually only had 4 cars get lapped, other than Thomas Doherty, who is our only DNF currently after his DQ a little bit earlier. They're still catching up to Anthony, who will make it 5 cars a lap down if they can get him in about a lap's time. Ooh, is this going to be 1 lap? This is going to be very close. Watching to see. Ooh, this might actually be 2 laps to go this time. They cross without 133 left. And it looks like that making life nice and easy. Anthony, very heads up in this situation. He's going to allow them to pass and won't get in the way. So what I thought was going to be white flag looks like an extra lap going to be given to Nye to catch up. And I think we missed this. I don't know if you had mentioned it there, Ron, but it looks like De Silva's had an issue. He's now 7 seconds behind where he was 2.5 earlier.
I did not notice that. I think, though, if there's anything to blame for that, it's probably me, as I was talking about De Silva putting on a commendable mistake-free drive after the drama a little bit earlier on when he did make mistakes. That is on cue for the commentators. Jinx falling Anvil to crash down on the driver of the number 24 car. So holds on to a good spot, has a comfortable gap to himself and James Legault, but would have been a little bit closer to the front. But this is going to be borderline. I believe it is a white flag this time by, but whenever we find ourselves in these little close touch and go situations as to whether or not it's the end or whether it's the white flag lap, you got to worry about the fuel for some drivers all throughout this field, whether or not they can actually make it to the end. Because if they fueled up for 1 lap mark, they actually go a lap extra, you may see some drivers sputtering across the line here.
There is indeed that white flag, 1 to go, about 2 seconds left as they cross the bricks. And Trippett hopefully has put that buffer into his fuel tank when he filled up. He did have a longer stop than Johan Nye, so that works well for him. Other drivers, though, Vernon Messer with the shortest stop of the cars on the lead lap there. DiVincenzo with even shorter, but of course he has to go 1 lap less to finish this race. In the meantime, through the chicane of 5 and 6, Ron, Trippett's still looking good. He's keeping Nye at arm's length.
Yeah, and frankly, that's everything that Ed Trippett needed to do in this final stint. You don't have to throw caution to the wind and try and extend that gap out to multiple seconds. You can just keep him above a half-tenth, maybe around 3/4 of a second, and you could hold on to that spot, and that's exactly what Ed Trippett has done. 7/10 separate the two of them as they head their way out of turn number 10 for the final time, unless Johan Nye goes for an almighty dive down to 12. Looks like Edward Trippett in that 444 car going to get his first win here in this season.
Still got to complete these last 2 corners, though. We have to remember, so he is not out of the woods. In fact, we got to remember in our pro class, our potential winner ran out of fuel in the final corner. So Ed Trippett coming to the line, looks like he's safe, and I think we can call him our winner in the challenge class as he celebrates his victory. Oh, he is pumped on this one. Love to see drivers experiencing that thrill of victory. Nye should still be happy with his second place, 0.3 of a second behind him, but he made him work for it. And De Silva with an impressive recovery, in spite a mistake-filled race, still spraying some champagne today.
Yeah, those drivers, all of them that finished on the podium, they had such different paths to get there. Trippett able to withstand the challenge from Nye. I think the word of the night to describe his race, under the radar. We didn't really talk about him too much in the early stages, just was able to close up that gap, make his way up to the front, able to get that job done. Antonio De Silva, meanwhile, just proving that you should never give up in these races. He stuck with it from the drop of the green through to the fall of the checkered, even with some drama that may have gone on for him throughout the race. He never gave up, and he walks away with the podium in the process.
Contrasting fortunes with Vernon Messer, our pole sitter, will actually finish last on the lead lap, it appears. Although, oh, no, Sean Bailey's ran out of fuel, so he is going to be able to beat Sean, despite Sean's long pit stop. And Vernon, is also running out of fuel right here at the end. So there were a couple drivers that cut it just a tad too close, but Vernon had enough to go by the 999 machine, who doesn't even look like he is going to reach the end of that final lap. But here is our results. Ed Trippett, your victor over Johan Nye by a bit of a smaller margin than what we had seen in the previous races. Antonio De Silva with a nice third over James Legault in fourth. Les Carmichael, another driver that made mistakes out there today, but still gets a top 5 to his name. John Kaplan, our highest climber, he gets 6 over Jeffrey Block in 7th. And Keith Markison was 8th with Robert Velez in P9. Dave Jones will finish in 10th today. From there, it's Alex Lidback finishing in 11th. Sean Bailey in 12th. Vernon Messer will come home 13th, last one on the lead lap. DiVincenzo winds up in 14th, while Jack Stevenson is scored in 15th. David Santry 16th, and Lisa Eskridge in 17th. Andy McCune with some serious problems today, finishing 18th, and Thomas Doherty, our only DNF of the day, finishing in 19th. Let's have a little chat with Ed Trippett. Hopefully he hasn't lost that excitement here after coming home with his first victory of Series 14. Ed, as we watched you cross the line, it looked like that one meant a lot to you.
Yeah, it really did. It's my first win, I think, ever. I want to thank Ryan for the tip on keeping that downforce as maxed out as possible. That's what kept it on the track. A big call out to Princess Cruises for everything they do to help us have this televised event. Obviously, PCA for everything they've done. Doug and the team. I can't tell you how much this means to me, but very exciting. A big call out to Vic, who's watching tonight, and some of my other friends. But yeah, I can't tell you how much this means to me, but yeah, thanks a lot.
No problem. Talk about, though, after the pit stops, we were watching you and Johan. Were you getting nervous as you saw him exiting pit lane there?
No, I'm not really nervous. These guys are really great drivers. You know, they drive hard, but they drive respectful. So I just knew I had to get there. And I think it was, I'm not sure who was side by side. I mean, I'm not looking at anything but the road in front of me. So I have no gauges. I'm in VR. So it's all like I'm really in the car. So, you know, when a car comes out, I sometimes just don't know who it is, other than I know I don't want them ahead of me. So that's what that was all about when I came out of the pit. But in the end, I just needed to keep my head down. And, you know, it just turned out early in the race. You know, I qualified 6th, but I kind of thought if I just kind of concentrated, I really felt this might be the night I could pull my first victory. And sure enough, here I am.
The concentration paid off. So that's 2 podiums, including your first win in PCA in the first 3 races. That has to be a good sign to you, I imagine, for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, this cup car really works for me. The GT3R was just too many things, I guess. I don't know, but this car feels like you're driving a motorcycle more than a car, and you got to really keep it in balance. And it's all about keeping it, you know, underneath you. They made this really slippery tonight, but it felt like a rain race in clear weather, but it was really slippery out there. So I just knew the drive smooth and comfortable. I do well in the rain typically, so I felt this might be the one. So sure enough, here we are.
Well, again, can't congratulate you enough. Go celebrate and enjoy your win.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot.
That was Ed Trippett, your victor here today. Just over the moon. Love seeing that smile. Finishing behind him, it was awful close there, Ron, but Johan Nye was about 3/10 away from a victory himself.
Yeah, and Johan Nye now joining us here in the booth. Johan, welcome in. P2 for you at the end of this race, but it wasn't down to any lack of effort. You put in an almighty drive throughout this race. So how was it out there here in Indy?
Well, thank you so much. I'm not used to this. This is my very first podium, so I'm kind of proud of this race. Ed was just a little bit faster than me. I'd be faster in a couple of turns. Ed would be faster in some other turns, but Ed and I do team racing together, so Ed's a good friend, and congratulations to Ed.
Yeah, and upon you saying that, I want to ask you how it was like in that battle right towards the end. You just said your first real time on the podium here in the PCA world. So just how was it out there? I mean, like, nerves notwithstanding, trying to battle for a race win at the end of it all. Just how was it kind of looking back saying, hey, you know, I got P2 at the end of the day. I got a podium, and I put on a pretty darn good battle and gave it my best. So how are the feelings leaving this race and looking back on the race that you put together?
Well, throughout the race, I was pretty much in the zone. You know, I had a good pace, and every once in a while, I'd say, "Oh my God, I'm in P2. I'm going to be on the podium. What am I going to say?" And then I'd say, "Johan, get back into the zone." So yeah, I was in the zone throughout the whole race. pretty much. And Ed's just a little bit faster. I had my chance on pit exit. I think I was a little faster in the pit than Ed was. My strategy was to go as long as I could so that I'd have the least amount of fuel. And Ed and I were door to door for a couple of turns there, but he got ahead of me, and that was the race.
Yeah, so a very good drive for you here at Indy, and I want to ask you what your thoughts are heading off into round number 4 of this season at Laguna Seca in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, Laguna Seca is a fun track. It's a hard track, especially the corkscrew, so it'll be a challenge. But I want to thank a few people. First of all, my wife Susan, who's my biggest fan. I think she's watching right now. Doug and the steering team, they really run a professional outfit, even though they're volunteers. And a couple of folks, shout out to Mike Patterson, Joachim Bucker, and Chris Pies, who have been very helpful for me.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us here in the broadcast booth, Johan. Well done on the P2, and looking forward to seeing you out there on the racetrack in Laguna Seca in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.
And that right there was Johan Nye, our P2 finisher. I'll pass it back off to you, Joe.
Indeed, we've got our third place finisher ready to chat to us as well, Antonio De Silva. And Antonio, I'm very curious what your emotions are right now, because we saw a number of mistakes and you finished in P3. So there's got to be probably some conflicting emotions, I'm sure, knowing that maybe there was more on the table.
Yeah, indeed. I was not lucky at Watkins Glen, and today it was all my fault. I actually had a mishap on lap 1, and from there on, I was not able to recover. And that was not the only one. Eventually, I had a few other off courses, off tracks, and that killed my race. I mean, I made it all the way back. At one point, I was like 10 seconds behind the leaders. I made it back to up to 3. And that was it. They were, congratulations to them. Eddie and Johan, they pushed it. They ran a completely trouble-free race, mistake-free, and that's how you win.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you attribute the mistakes to today? Was the hot track kind of making it difficult? Was there something that just kept you from getting focused? Generally, what was the problem?
Actually, I can tell. On lap 1, I don't know. It's either I was too close to somebody, maybe a little of a. I mean, I know that I almost went all the way to the wall. I was able to somehow control the car a little bit and come back, but that was from there on. I was already saying this is over for me, and then eventually I had another mistake and made it even worse. I thought I actually could win this race. I did a lot of practice. I put a lot of time on it, and it didn't work.
Well,
too bad.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been focusing on the negative here. I want to put a positive spin on things. You look at your results, back-to-back thirds, and that's when you've said you haven't had good races. You got to feel pretty good knowing that there's thirds even on a bad day. Surely a win is somewhere down the line.
Indeed, the third actually is really good. I think I actually had the fastest lap of the race, and it's rewarding. But surely, when you think that you have it in the pocket and then you lose it, it's too bad. And I'm looking for Laguna Seca, and maybe we'll get a win there.
I think that there's definitely something to it. It looks like the speed is there, and congratulations on a podium.
Thank you so much, Joe, and the broadcast team. Thank you, guys.
That was Antonio De Silva finishing third today. And that is going to close out our interviews as we heard from Antonio. Up next, we've got Laguna Seca for the Challenge Series. That's going to be in 2 weeks' time, of course, and that'll be on October 23rd. However, We will be at Laguna Seca in just less than 1 week when we come back Wednesday night, October 15th, for the pro class. A big thank you, by the way, goes to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as to our team tonight, Ramiro and Ron. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.